Hemshech Ayin Beis, Volume 1. We're up to chapter Kuf Chafei, 125, in Discourse 31, the Maimer Lo Yachal Yosef Lisapik, page Reish Mamalf, 241. We're in the middle of the discussion, or actually concluding the discussion of Sefirot from the word brightness, clarity. And that level is primarily in the Eir HaBligvul. What it means, Eir HaBligvul, in the Gili of the divine essence, the revelation expression of the divine expression. I made a statement which I want to just amplify upon and elaborate on, and that is that every line, every word in Ayin Beis, in Chassidus, is relevant to our personal lives and has a directive, Heirah, in our personal lives, which is based, of course, the Torah is Lashon Heirah. Everything in the Torah is a lesson. So when you read a story in the Torah, even it talks about Saras, leprosy in the time of the temple that's not possible today, or talks about Beis Hamikdash or offerings or Tum and Tara, we say every word has lessons, spiritual lessons for us. So obviously Chassidus itself, what's his spiritual lessons for us? And just like if you looked at a machine, an engineer of a machine said to you, there's thousands of components in a computer, and you say, well, I don't understand, why do we need all of them? It's because you don't understand exactly. Everyone, take out one of them and the whole machine can stop working. So we may have 75 trillion cells, and someone say, hey, let's move one of cell, like what was it, the great guy, the Archduke of Austria, Vienna, told Mozart when he heard his music for the first time, he says, beautiful, but far too many notes. Do you understand? Too many musical notes. It was too much. So Mozart responded, yes, Your Majesty, but not one more than necessary. Okay. You see the human body, you see nature. The fact, if you don't understand why a component is useful, is exactly that. We don't understand. So, if man-made things are this way, machines, and everyone understands this, right? Because it's not just that every piece is necessary. There's also no extra pieces, because they call them Mesiv Gereya. You add something, you can be subtracting. God forbid, an extra chromosome or extra cell can create a problem. Actually, Down syndrome child is an extra chromosome. So there's a perfect. So there's definitely the structure. There's a reason for every step, but it's not just a reason. God doesn't need it for His bag of tricks. He doesn't need to show off that I can do more. I have Sefirot, I have Bligvul. I'll throw you another few Bligvul Sefirot, another level. Well, there's no point. The point is because existence has changed as a result, and means our work has changed as a result. So every step, Bligvul, we're compelled, behoove, to answer the question, what's the difference if there's Bligvul and Sefirot or not? I'm sorry, if there's Sefirot and Bligvul or not. We have to answer that question. Just like we have to answer the question, what difference in my life would it be if there was no Atzilus and no Bria and no Sefirot and so on? Most people would say, I never heard there was Sefirot before you told me. So what difference does it make now that you told me there's Sefirot? You know? There's 7 billion people walking on this planet. Many of them don't know there are 10 spheres.
Really?
See? And then the few that do know, don't really know why we need them. So we got a long way to go here. But the answer is, my friends, that there's absolute reason and there's absolute relevance. And I would say not only that, it's the most important thing in existence to know that. It would be the equivalent of someone saying, I don't know what building blocks define who I am. Now you asked a good question. Friedrich Rebbe, and in general, is Chassidus focused on self-help and personal growth? Which some would say, no, Chassidus is focused on doing what God wants, not what you want. Not becoming a more shleimesdika person, but become what God wants. But, those words we've been told many times. It's already, we've we even vomited those words. We've been told. But let's dissect the words. It is God who created me. So if I'm not being the best I can be, I'm not being the best God created me to be. For one simple thing, monkey wrench. So it's true, my intention shouldn't maybe be doing it for selfish purpose, that I should be more successful, more productive, a better father. Fine. Even that I would say is shalei l'shma at worst. But not to be a better person is basically saying to God, you gave me, a machine, and I'm not going to do anything about it. Or I'm going to do it just for you. I don't really care. That's not So, and the truth is, what the Rabbeim are trying to be shale is that don't think it's all about you and about your growth. When someone learns Chassidus just to feel more complete, like, now I get it. Obviously, the goal is one step further, taking this and refining yourself. You want to refine yourself, shalei lishma, because you want to look you want to be a better father? So be it. It says, Ayin yasik b'teil mitzvah shalei lishma anyway. And let's be honest, is anyone that does anything lishma? Pure lishma, is such a thing even? So why suddenly here when it comes to Chassidus we say, now as lishma, I can't use this for personal gain, because I'm a lishma person. 99% of your day you're doing everything for yourself, everything but Ayin Beis I do for myself. Like the Rebbe said with God. You talk in business, the Rebbe said, talk to people about God. You're going to work anyway. So so people say, how can you talk about God at work? Talk to Goyim about God. So you can talk money with them, you can talk about all your personal gain, but God, no, Chas v'shalom, God is only for me in the shul. Hey, you want me to open it?
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen, you'll eat it in the kitchen?
Yaakov decided the little steps are going to be his table. Because me and Yaakov get a picture, small share
okay, go ahead.
We put it into the kitchen,
okay.
And that's our
Make sure it
table.
doesn't fall. Here, carry this right, doesn't fall. Go back to the kitchen. Go. So,
I got a rock in my mouth.
everything but God. You're talking to them about everything anyway. No, God, how can I talk to them about God? It's the same logic that's here. Everything I do all day is about me. Mitamah, learn Chassidus, is not about me, it's about God. So I would say, I have no problem, learn it selfishly, apply it selfishly, become a better person selfishly, you'll be in pretty good shape. Even if you want to put it that way. And then there's Elim Yaskon, but I would go even a step further. I did the book on the Sefirot Emir. You've seen the book, The 49 Days. Why did I do it? I'm sitting in my class in Manhattan, and I'm talking about, Keser. And someone raises his hand and says, first time I've ever seen that we have this mitzvah called counting the Omer. You learn most from people who are not programmed, right? The first time I've ever seen doing it, it's very interesting. Can you explain to me what's the difference between the first one and the second one? So I was able to manage 1 week. We all can do the first week. Chesed, Gvura Shebechesed, Malchus Shebechesed. Right, that's the one, exactly. Then came to week 2, and he didn't let go. He said, now what? Okay, let's go figure out what Heit Shebegvura is, or what Teferes Shebegvura is. Now I learned this, and I started looking at it, and I realized we all just say it. We say the Hirotzen. It says even L'tayher Midazu and be Mezachechit. We even say it. But what do we say? We say God should be Metayered for us, basically. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm saying Heit Shebegvura, whatever it is. So then I went to our big maskilim. I went to Rabbi, I went to other people. I said, what are you mechaven in this? So Rabbi told me, I'm mechaven when I'm mechaven my old might fillers. There's the ani mispal das that God should be mechaven. My kavan is. He made it as a joke. So I said, well, really, is there? He said, he never saw, and he never really looked into it. He says he's not up to that erech yet in Sefer Erechim. Okay. So then I called up Melech Tzvibel, and I called a bunch of people, and most people said, I said, so 1 second, so the whole thing we count, if we didn't have Sefirot Emir, it's also a shaila. Aren't the Sefirot there to help us understand ourselves in order to refine? So everyone said the same answer, which I knew without them. That is Bechlolos. This doesn't go into the details of it. It's Bechlolos Birur Hamidus. But the Alter Mittler Rebbe writes in Shari Yichud, you can't do any Aveda, but Bechlolos, you have to have someone will say, I want to become a better person. That's meaningless. You have to focus what area you're going to do. You want to become more tzedakah? Fine. You want less gevura? Fine. You want more humility? The specifics. And we have 49 days. It says the Jews counted 49 days because they were preparing for Matan Torah, and every day was another bitter. So I decided, I picked myself up, I got off my thing, and I'm not lazy, and I started looking into it. I started learning Chassidus. I started looking up in the Maftechus. And lo and behold, I started finding, there's no one place. There's that Maimer, Friedrich Rebbe has it in Sefer Mamorim, there's the Rebbe has it, but it's a Maimer from the Rebbe Rashab, where he goes through the first week. He goes from Chesed to Chesed to Malchus Shebechesed. Short, but there's something to work with. Then I started looking, and I realized there's 50 interpretations in each Sefirah, so I had to find one Shita. There's 3 meanings in Hayd itself, let alone Malchus and Teferes. The Chesed and Gvura, more or less everybody knows. Chesed is giving, Gvura is withholding. When you get to the other ones, they're very complicated. So I finally found one approach, and I decided, I'll put it down, and every week at the class, due to this guy challenging me, I gave it to them. And I realized that I didn't even think of making a book from it. It was handouts I gave. And then the next year someone saw it, so they asked me if they could make copies. Well, a few years passed, someone came, a designer, said, let the design, we'll make a book out of it. It became hugely popular, and I know why. I know, obviously because it's short and so on, but why didn't the Rabbeim write it that way? The Rabbeim, as I said yesterday, the Rabbeim are giving us the doctrine of Torah. Why is Torah Chumash doesn't just tell you the Hira? Why do we need to learn so many Sfarim? Why, instead of telling us a whole Pasha Vayechi, tell us the Hira and Avodas Hashem? Because there's million Haveras. The Torah is telling you the blueprint. Now you have to apply it. That's what we need teachers for, Mashpim and so on. So I realized that my book is not definitive. Someone can go do the other 49 midas in a different way. But it's one way. So my point is, I don't see it as self-help at all. I see it as understanding these midas in us. And if you take a focus on them, you can grow as a human being. And there's something to look at. There's something to hold on to. This part of Chassidus, it's like, as I said yesterday, we're learning Gemara without Rashi. We have 7 generations of the Rabbeim. It's pure doctrine. They gave us pure Divrei Elokim Chaim. It's as pure as it gets. Then there's another step, which is called what we do with it. And that's what we have to sit and do. And that is the part they've not really taught us, but I think it's obvious to me that's what all this is about. Because the Rebbe Rashab is going back to the subject here. He's teaching us the interface. You want to know the number one, the short answer to all the questions: why is there Atzilus, and why is there Sefirot, and why is there Blikvul, why is there Eid Ein Sof, why is all this? Is one reason and one reason only: for us, finite, limited human beings, to connect to God. What it means more specific, for our machine should be aligned with the purpose for which it was created. Yes, so does that include becoming a better person? Absolutely. If you look at this, you apply, you will become a better person. Begashmis. If you're doing it for that reason, or you're doing it because God wants you to be a better person, I leave up to you to figure out where you are at. To me, frankly, I'd rather have a good person who's doing it for himself than a bad person who's doing it for God. You know what I mean? He's only thinking about God. You know what I'm saying? So, from my point of view is sometimes it says, it's a strong expression. The whole mitzvahs were given only to refine people. Because God doesn't need the mitzvahs. Now, obviously, according to Chassidus, there's deeper reasons and so on. So yes, every time we say this by Shidduchim, we say it by everything that we say. Every time husband and wife, there's a new marriage, we say there's a union that ripples through all of existence. All of existence changes because two individuals, two souls that were meant to come together were separate, now they come together. On a smaller scale, every time you meet somebody and you use it as an opportunity to do something better, that's a bitter, that's a yichud. But the Lashon of Kabbalah, yichudim. The other option is to be selfish and just live your life and take care of yourself. That's the whole point of Chassidus, that every step of your life, every second, you are elevating the world, refining it, bringing more elokus into the world. Even the word elokus is like, what does elokus mean? You don't know elokus. The Rebbe said the words to the CNN. What's the message to the world? The Mashiach, he said the Mashiach is on his way, and if all we have to do is increase in acts of goodness and kindness, and we'll hasten his coming. Right? So sounds like this is the Rebbe speaking. The same Rebbe that said deep Maimoreh Chassidus, the same Shechina medaberes mitaygrene. What's goodness and kindness? Chesed and Yesher. That's what it means. It's essentially the yisod of all Torah and all mitzvahs, especially also Shav mitzvahs v'nei Eich. And if someone really took it seriously, those words you can analyze: what's goodness, what's kindness, how do people act in goodness and kindness. That's in Lashon Chassidus what he says in Tanya, Perek Lamed Zayin. Yemesa Mashiach Tachlis is Gili Eid Ein Sof Be'elam Hazeh Gashmi. It's a revelation of the divine in this world. And how do you do it? Well, next line. In mitzvahs, Toli b'maseinu v'avodasenu kischar mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah, you are releasing elokus into this world that was trapped. Is this basic? What it means in personal terms, that when you behave in a more refined way, whatever aspect of your midas are, whether it's from chokhmah from chesed through malchus, or in your intellect chokhmah through bin das, you are aligning yourself to elokus, and when elokus is revealed, you built another building block, which sum total of is Mashiach. Geula. You've all heard these words. The thing is applying it and seeing each level in this context. Anyway, that's my overall. Make sense? No, it's an alternative. I don't even know. I've never heard another, let's put it this way, alternative. I don't see how to see it any other way, frankly. Anyone can play devil's advocate here? Is there another way to look at it? Just to know the levels. Yeah, it says in Tanya, I should say, that when you learn Chassidus, you learn Yedias Seder Shtalshus is also Mekayim Mitzvah. It's called Yedias Elokus, to know God. But that too, number one, is a mitzvah. That's also a number two. Knowing God means that you connect to God. It becomes you become more godly when you know God. It's not just knowing God philosophically and behaving another way. Right? You know, and then it arouses something in your heart. Tell me, since you're sitting and learning the same Beis, you don't feel you want to get closer to God? I would love to spend a little time with God and talk about these Bli Gvul in the Sefirot and Bli Gvul. What do you think?
That's what you're doing when you're reading this.
There you go, exactly. There he is. He's right on the camera. But the question is, can we hear? You're absolutely right. You got it right. So let's hear what God has to tell us through the Rebbe Rashab about Sefirot Bli Gvul. Ready to continue? That's a good way to look at it. Okay, so this last chapter we left off with a few untied knots, if we can put it that way. And I need all your brilliant heads here to put our heads together to figure this out. So let's since we're talking about relevance, let's just for a moment talk about the relevance of this. Upstairs. A big question, here's a way I would present this to an outside audience, so to speak, who don't necessarily know Ayin Beis. A big question that philosophers and thinkers have all the time is, can we mortal, limited human beings touch the heaven? Or are we limited? We can only go that far, and we hit a glass ceiling. You can't go further. Another way to put it is, there's always been the search for what they called immortality. You know why the pyramids, the pharaohs of old, when they died, they had these pyramids built, and they had their wives and their families buried with them, because they wanted immortality. They wanted to be frozen in time. So they thought that's the way to do it. You know, one of the big things with people driving is to make a mark in this world that will last forever. Now, frankly, most people do live lives of instant gratification. They think about here and now. But there is this element. From a Chassidish point of view, from Ayin Beis, this is also a question. The question is, can the finite touch the infinite? Now, this is not just a philosophical question. It really comes down to that, do the things I do today really matter? Because you could say, if someone can make the argument, you know what? We all die at the end. Everybody's buried in the same earth. So who cares? You were a little better person, but once you're in the earth, what difference does it make? What do you tell your child that asks you this question? Why should I pay a price to be a better person when we're all going to die and everybody's going to be eaten by the same worms? What's the answer to that? So some people answer it's the right thing to do. You got to be a good person. It doesn't matter whether you don't think about the rest. Others say because that's what God wants. But what's the real answer? Are these answers enough to make you feel good? And if one day I don't feel good, and if it doesn't make me feel good, the answer is that you may physically die, but your good deeds don't die. That when you do it, it changes the world forever. But that's a very strong word. Why? How do we know? How can that be possible? So the answer is because the purpose of existence is that God, who is infinite and beyond, gave us the power to be like Him. And when we connect and we do this, we have that power. But the philosophical question is, how? This is a structured universe that erodes and is dying all the time. That's Bligvul and beyond. How do these two meet? As a matter of fact, we all know that before Matan Torah there was Taka Gzeira. El Yenim could not come down, and what was below couldn't go up, which makes sense. Heaven is heaven. Hashemayim lil Hashem. Va'aretz nitla b'nei adam, and earth is the domain of human beings. Well, let's make it a little more personal. At work, I do what needs to be done at work. When I come home, that's when I'm more a refined person. I'm like two personalities. When I'm in the material world, I'm a material person. When I'm in the spiritual world, I'm a spiritual person. It's called compartmentalization. On Yom Kippur, I'm Yom Kippur. The rest of the day, now obviously there's the first flaw in that is there's only one God. Is there a different God on Yom Kippur than on the middle of a Wednesday or a Thursday? Secondly, it creates psychologically a big problem, because psychologically we have two different type of lifestyles, two different type of attitudes. So all this is answered by understanding that there's Sefirot, that there's 10 spheres that are half God and half human, if you want to put it that way. Half God and half structure. And God wanted a structure and manifested himself in a structure. But then the question is, how deep do those spheres go? How far can you go? You're still going to hit a ceiling. You're going to hit a ceiling where the spheres reach a place and I can't go further. Says the Rebbe Rashab, no. There's an element of spheres which is called Behiras that go even further than the actual structure. The mere thing that there's such a thing called revelation. God expresses himself. You can connect to that through the spheres. We still have to figure out how the 10 spheres lead us there. But the same spheres that are called 10 and they're called number tell a story, and the same ones also reveal something. And what's the ultimate revelation? Not just the revelation of the containers revealing the energies. Not just the revelation of the energies revealing the gvul of the energy of existence. Not just the energy and containers of Keser, which are like engraved letters. So yes, it's a higher level, it's of the same substance. But pure energy itself. Pure, undiluted energy. Which is really the main Eir HaBligvul, is the ultimate sphere. So spheres down below, so to speak, lead us to this place. That's where we are right now. That there's actual spheres and Bligvul. But what does spheres there mean? Behirus. Clarity. So to explain this in the last chapter, he went to say, Hoyd v'hodar, that there's two levels. There's the actual concept of divine expression, that's Atik or Hoyd. And then there's the hispashtus of that level. There's the expression of that level. That's Arich and Hodar. And spheres are the expression. That in Eir Ein Sof, they are bright. So in other words, you can almost dissect and say there's an element of Eir Ein Sof that's not bright yet. You don't call it brightness, in the sense that it's... But it is a concept of Eir. And then there's the state where it's brightness. To explain this, and he said that's what specifically Hodar has the details, so to speak. So to explain this, he wrote the expression Antu Chad V'lei B'chushbon, and we discussed this at length. What's Antu Chad V'lei B'chushbon? He is one, you are one, but not with chushbon, without measurement. So he said Antu Chad, because he's fundamentally one. Therefore, when he comes into the world of cheshbon, of number, he's lei b'chushbon, uncountable. It's infinite. And he explained this infinity is not just that there's spheres that are endless, not just 10, 11, but infinite, but every sphere, everything in there is fundamentally Ein Sof in quality. It's all pshittus. So what we have now is not atzmos, which is beyond all existence. In existence, whatever we call existence, the actual concept of existence, you have infinite existence. So now what we've achieved is that in existence has now been embedded the code of the etzem, of pshittus. Had there not been Eir, you'd have atzmus, that's where the domain that is beyond everything, and existence begins with a structure. Here you have a field of energy that is a step below, that reveals the etzem, but it's still a step of complete pshittus. Remember we spoke about the color is white. You could have had no color at all, and you jump straight to blue and green, and red and yellow. No, we have a thing called a colorless color. So in the world of colors, now we have something. We have, in numbers, we have infinite numbers. So now in existence, we have now the part of the code of something that is beyond existence. So it's really an in-between place. It's very hard to relate to. It's far easier to say existence has parameters, and all we can do is reach those parameters. Now we're saying existence, because it came from God, God embedded in it a part of His own pshittus. But in Atzmos, pshittus is not even called pshittus. You can't call it anything. So He embedded in the world of existence that is meant to be a structured existence, something that is absolutely pshittus. We learned in Avodah, for example, earlier, we learned where's that taste? When you do something not for any personal gain. Talk about self-help. Not even to connect to God. Remember we said the Yesod of the Avodah is, what's colorless? That there's absolutely no color that colors your intentions. So we have a taste when a person does something that is completely selfless, with complete Mesiras Nefesh, complete dedication, you have a taste in existence of pshittus. I'll give you another example. We'll talk about children. Yeah, we have a specimen here, a child. So it's the Baal Shem Tov says a very interesting, the line, he says, pshittus of a ish pashut, the simplicity of a simple person touches the pshittus of atzmos. Same thing with a child. A child's innocence touches the innocence of atzmos. That means you have in existence, you have the ability to have innocence. Someone could say, you know what, once you're in existence, it's no longer pure innocence. There's always going to be some color, some taint, some tint. No, in existence you have it. This is the point here. In Ayin, which is already now the beginning of existence, and I say existence, I don't mean there's no Bria yet, it's before the Tzimtzum, but you have something that's outside of the Etzem, you have a taste of this Pshittus. So Chad be'etzem, that's Atik, so also its expression, its Pashtus, also comes Beribi Madregas. And it's all in the form of Ein Sof. And to explain this, he went on and said, that when that the Shem Chacham Be'ed Ein Sof, when you say God is Chachma, you say God is a Chacham in Eid Ein Sof, you're saying it's only to share the opposite of it. The same Yochel, which he says is Bina. So when we describe things there, we're really describing, it's not what we know it as here. So we see wisdom, we see capability, so we know that it's there, and that this is where we need some, this is where I am not so clear about what his ultimate kavanah is. When it's Boisham, the calls are Einam Madrega Be'ed Ein Sof, Ki'im, who aflos Eid Ein Sof.
The possibility of it.
One second, let me just look there again, because I looked in a second. Kuf Aleph. Second version. Okay, so he said there, what are you really coming to understand when you say, let's say you see a person who's really wise. Okay, you see a person who's very capable. Okay, so you say, you know what, God created such a wisdom, that means that the source of all this also has a lot of wisdom. But then you come to negate and say, no. If he can create something so wise, it just tells me how beyond his type of wisdom is. So he said there, you're not learning here what God is like, you're just learning about the grandeur of God. You're saying the grandeur. And in that sense, the grandeur of God through Chachma, or the grandeur of God through Yechelis, is similar. Because you're not talking about the level. You're not talking about in Chachma and Bina. You could say, here's a Chacham, here's a Maven. When you go to Shlila, you're talking about the grandiosity of God's power. So let's, for example, say you're standing in front of Niagara Falls, or by the Grand Canyon, or you're looking up into heaven. You feel awe. Yes, the awe came from three different things. But since you're talking about awe, you're not talking about the level of Chachma Bina, which you would get like by understanding, let's say, how Niagara Falls functions. You're getting the awe of the thing that put it there. So through Shlila, you're coming to understand the magnitude of Ein Sof. That's what he said there. So it's not really a madrega. You can't really call it a Chachma Bina. You can call it through Chachma. But you also, so it's... One second.
Why can't we?
So when it's Barasham, the calls it in a madrega beid in sof, kim hafla in sof. It's not a madrega neid in sof. That's the key. That's what he wants to say here. So in other words, when you're talking, it's using it as an example. What is going on? It's what kind of sphere is it? If Chachma Bina, the sphere is the essence sphere, has brought you now through Shlila to a place of, let's call it Eid HaBlikvul. This hafla, this wonder. What did it bring you? Do you have Chachma Bina there? The answer is no. You have wonder. You have awe. Like he said. So you have an expression of something that is beyond. That's what he's saying here. So that the key thing here, what he's trying to say here is, that's the Dias Hashlila. It's like my flaw there and stuff. Top of last page, he said by Atik you don't even have that. One second. So you have that flaw, and then now to explain this, he goes into the shita of Eretz Pshutim. You want to say something before I continue?
Yeah, maybe can he be saying just something simple not so simple, but Lishla Hepachim is that usually would mean on a simple level. You can't say that he's not a chacham. In other words, he gets into this whole explanation of Sefirot in the pshitas of Sefirot that really they're interchangeable and it's not really chacham, it's not really bina. Maybe he's trying to say like your whole thing of this field of energy. He's trying to say Yidilas Hashlil over here is where we come to a place where we have all the possibilities. It's not in other words, he's just trying to say that we have here all Sefirot. It's not that there's no chachma here. We have chachma also. It's not getting to the higher level of chachma. It's not this type of chachma or this type of chachma. No, lishal hepachim is there to say that we have all the possibilities over here. Just like we have by the Sefirot of chachma and bina, we find that the pshitas of Sefirot. That it's not chachma really. It's not bina really. It's just the ability to be chacham, the ability to be bina. So here also in this new field where Hashem creates is Sefirot and Kates, where we have everything here.
I like what you say. I agree with you. I think it's a good point. And you read chapter Kuf Aleph, what he refers to, 101? No. I'm in agreement with you because I think this what you just added may be a key element here, and I'll just repeat it how I understand it. It's a good point. You see, initially I was thinking that Yidiyas Hashlila means it's still the tzir of Chachma, except it's not our Chachma. But that's not correct. It's what you just said is correct. What's coming on here is only saying, like you said, is zak lishla hepech mizeh. In other words, you cannot say he's not a chacham, but you're not trying to say that he's a chacham. You're trying to say his chachma is beyond the structure of existence. So you're correct. We're not talking about a level where there's no spheres, period. You're talking about the spheres as we know them. Go to the root. What you'll have is an infinite amount of spheres where Chachma and Bina can be replaceable, they can interchange. That's why he brings afterwards Eidos Pshutim. He's going to bring the proof from a lower level. Because even on a lower level where it becomes Er Pnimi, where it becomes an immanent energy, also Chachma could have been Bina and Bina could have been Chachma. Era Chachma could have gone into Bina and could have been Mahava Bina and Bina could have. So you're correct. What you're saying is essentially, remember we said that when God, who's beyond all, manifests in beauty, is the ultimate infinite beauty. When He manifests in numbers, is the infinite numbers. When He manifests in Sefirot, you have everything. Exactly like you said. You have Chachma and you have Bina and you have many more. But on that level, it's not saying he's made up of Chachma Bina. In 10 spheres, you can say 10 spheres is made up of a structure. It's called Chachma Bina through Malchus. And this level, you can't say it's made up. You just say he has everything. Since he has everything, he also has Chachma and Bina. So you can't you can't. So that when you say Yediyas Hashlil, you're just saying Lishla Hepech Mezeh, just to say that it's not Chachma. It's only to say that he's not. I'm trying the translation Lishla Hepech Bina Yediyas Hashlil Hurak Lishla Hepech Mezeh. Not to say there's Chacham and Eir Sof. It's just to say, not to say that he's not Chachma. He has everything. So we could have said that God is beyond everything and doesn't have everything, and everything is only in the domain of existence. Now we're saying no. The infinite Ein Sof telling you, I have everything, including everything that's in existence. This is a critical component.
It's all Peshitas.
And it's all in the form of Peshitas. Very important point. Because you see what I just said? You could have said that the Bligvul means, it negates everything. Now we say no, it's the ultimate of everything, and beyond, and even more than we can imagine. So that therefore, everything that we find in Atzilus, let's say, or in this world of Chacham Bina Das, has a connection to there. But there it's Behirus, there it's Pshitas, there it's a form of just infinite energy, field of energy. Yeah, very good.
That's what we say, that each sphere is itself is Bashar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to explain this, Rabbi Ayin, he said, let's go according to the Shita of Eretz Pshutim. Even on the law, when Eir already now manifests in containers, there's a Shita that holds an opinion that it's like plain water, plain liquid, colorless, that is just taking on the shape of the. So it looks to us that way, but the energy doesn't assume those properties. And basically, Eir HaChachma could have given power, could have created Eir Bina. And Eir Bina could have been created Chachma. So Makol Shkein, this is an Eir Sof Abligvul, She'er B'chinas Pshitas Mamish, had Eina B'geder B'chinas Chachma Bina. You can't call it Geder Chachma Bina, though it includes it all. I'm reading from the top of the page, just again. V'im Kei Masha'ana Eimashum B'kol Mokim Chacham V'yachol. Chachma is B'chachma Yachol B'bina. Had Eisa Eir Mamish B'chinas Chachma Gam Kim B'chinas Yechelis. So it's everything, but everything is everything, basically. That's a way to put it. Everything is everything. Because there's no containers. Okay, so this is when we say it's not chiyuv, only shlila. What do we mean by shlila? We're not saying he's not wise like we're wise. Means he's not defined by the chachma as we're defined by it, because they're all connected. In Eretz and Kelim, it's a chiyuv. This is chachma and this is bina. Kelim for sure. Even the Eir goes in there, and the Eir is commensurate to what it's giving power to. But in Bligvul, so in other words, you're saying they're spheres, but they don't have any parameters, basically. Good. Same energy. And that's what we said earlier in chapter 101, that we're not talking about levels in Ein Sof. We're not talking about Chachma. Now we have levels, but those levels are not like our levels. Kima flaw. We're talking about Haflaw here. We're talking about a grandeur, a majesty of the divine. Be'inyan ha'chachma v'ayechel is the grandeur within them. In other words, I think as I explained it then, tell me if this makes sense. When you see something beautiful, or you see something wise, you see a shlemus, you see something that has quality. So there's two sides to it. There's what the quality is. You could say, okay, this wisdom. You can describe what wisdom means. A person knows how to analyze something. A person understands it well. Another quality would be a person who's a Baal Chesed. He's giving. Whatever you go to him is unconditional. He's a person that helps everyone. I'm just giving an example. Then there's an element that you could describe, not describing the Chesed or the Chacham. You're describing. Look what a special person this is. Not because he's giving. You're talking more about the quality. The hafla is the compliment. This is a special person. You say, why is he special? Because he's very giving. But I'm not focusing on the giving. I'm focusing on the specialness in him that the giving teaches me about. That this is a refined person. You see what I'm saying? So when God created Chachma, there's two elements. There's Chachma and Bina as they define existence. This is Chachma. Okay, now I have a table and here's a chair. But then I say the architect of this, like in art. I'm no longer studying the details of the piece of art. I'm studying the awe that inspires me, the vision that these details illuminate. So it's the hafla. Good. Makes sense?
The hafla means it's beyond Madrigas.
Yeah, right. There, hafla, you're already not talking about.
You still call it chokhmah.
You call it chokhmah because, like he said, because you can't say he's not chokhmah. That's number one.
How does it on that mufla level? Is there a difference between chokhmah and bina?
No, he says clearly no. There's no difference.
But we still say chokhmah.
Because you came from there. It came from there, and chokhmah hasn't.
The lower chokhmah came from there.
In other words, look, all these pieces. Let me put it this way. You look at a painting. I'm going to give you an example. You look at a painting that's made up of a lot of pieces, and you say, "Wow, let's study." And you suddenly say, "Look how he made the tree. Amazing." You're not even looking at the rest of the painting. You just look at the tree. Someone says, "Well, look how he made the animal." This one says, "Look how he made the sky." That's the Chokhmah Bina. And then someone says, "Let's step back. 1 second. All of this, look at an image that he's giving us. That's not the sum of the parts even. He's telling us a story here. Remember, the hafla was about the story. Let's say when you hear a story, someone's speaking a story for 15 minutes. 2-3 minutes makes you cry. But then you go away, the whole story is much more than the specifics. But on the other hand, it's the specifics that brought you there. So it's basically, what he's really doing is, this is the exercise. He's taking details. We're detailed human beings. We define things in details. And he's showing you that within details there's an element of awe and hafla and grandeur and majesty that's beyond the detail. And at that level, yes, they all become equalized. But we're not talking about something beyond that. It is going from the chiyuv to the shlila, basically.
Say 10 Sefirot of the good.
You don't say 10. You don't say 10. We just get the word 10. Ein kates. You say Sefirot, you don't say 10. That's going to be the next chapter. He's going to ask about 10. Now you're saying Sefirot Behirus. The Lichtigkeit von Chochmah is nicht Chochmah. Get that? The Lichtigkeit von Bina is nicht Bina.
Und die Lichtigkeit von Beis is dieselbe Sache.
When you're on the level of Lichtigkeit, you don't distinguish them between the two.
In that example, usually the beauty.
Now, obviously, there's going to be another force, another track that God puts in to the field of energy, to make the form, not to keep it. Yeah, of course, He has to do that, or else it will remain in awe. You almost have to forget. That's the tzimtzum at the end of the day. You have to almost forget the awe in order to see the distinctions, or else you're not going to go anywhere.
And that level is also should be heard at this hafloya level.
You ever hear, I don't want to use it, but I'll use William Blake says, what's his poem, his unbelievable poem, where he says, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand. What is do you know the expression? Basically he says to hold infinity. Huh? No, but I want to give an example because it's a very good example.
Yeah.
He says, to see the beauty in a flower, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. I'm using because it's a Chassidish concept.
Yeah.
In a second.
To fill the flow of the...
Right, exactly. So someone can look at a grain of sand and say, it's a grain of sand. Someone said, grain of sand, this is infinity.
See.
Now, that's the point, that God planted into sand Bligvul. That's the point.
Right.
One of the biggest impact in my life was, I remember as a bacher, teenager, my parents were a summer at Bell Harbor, which was devastated by the Hurricane Sandy. I would go at night sometimes, late at night, and stay up all night watching the ocean. And then I was learning Chassidus, Lo Yush Beisu, of nature. The ocean, unbelievable taste of infinity. That never stops, no sleeping. And when you look at the world, everything is not like that. So it gives you a taste. And the Akedah, Chassidus brings from the Akedah, that Taka, there are things, Lo Yush Beisu is meant to give us a taste of Ein Sof. But of course, it's Ein Sof in our reality.
Maybe it's the other way. Maybe the rule is just an illusion. I mean, I almost see that.
Well, if you don't have a Torah, you could say that. But God wants Gvul. God created Bereshis Bar Elokim.
Yeah.
What's the but? He said so. So it's not a but. He said it.
Why is that really Gvul? Because it is.
Because why are you limiting God to Bli Gvul? Why is Bli Gvul better than Gvul?
Yeah. I'm not saying better.
So why would? Why is it better to say Bli Gvul and the Gvul is illusion? Why don't you say? So say Gvul and Bli Gvul is an illusion. Why did you choose Bli Gvul? You like it better? Well, you know something. If you really want Bli Gvul, the true Bli Gvul of God, you need Gvul and because God is not Bli Gvul either. Even what we just said here is only a levush. It's only Hoyd or Hadar.
Hoyd is also levush.
Right. It's also not the ultimate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this. We're not even there yet. So that's what we're saying here. Okay, let's go on. V'zeu she'enim b'chinas madreges be'erin sof kima flo erin sof b'chinas chachma ve'yecheles. V'ayin she'erin sof shehu mufla b'chinas ha'chachma hari mufla gam b'chinas yecheles. So in other words, when you see an ocean ain't safe, you see it relentless. Then you look into the sky and say, how high is the sky? You see it's relentless. You're getting hafla here. It's the same hafla basically. It's the awe, this field of energy.
But what is this statement? Because
Yecheles is Bina.
Yecheles is Bina?
Yeah. We just read this. Look at the second line on top. Chachma Yachal Babina. He's trying to say the Sefirot, even though in the Sefirot in the Kalim there's a distinction, but when you get to the Eretz Pshutim or the Bli Gvul, it's one thing. You just said it. You're the one that just said that it has everything. So it's Chachma, it's Bina. And in its core, it's Pshitas Atzmas Kamay Shahu. That's what you're getting here. Actually, it's a beautiful concept. You know why? Because if you would say that you only get hafla when you look at a flower, and you don't get hafla when you look at the ocean, that means distinctions of existence is controlling. The fact that different things can bring us to a sense of awe.
So you do see the colors.
The colors lead you there.
No,
but we're talking how it's in the root, not how it's in the colors. No, listen. There's levels. There's levels where you still see the color, but then there's a level where you close your eyes and you disappear into the awe of it. Depends how high you go. No, of course, there's a level where you can still remember. I spoke about this. The Mittler Rebbe explains. I wanted to say this. When there's the parchment, think of the white parchment. That's the Bli Gvul here. Then when you start the white, you write letters. The letters are bringing out from the Bli Gvul. Now I'm seeing. Chachma is really a taste of haflas ein sof. Not from Chachma we get hafla. That's how we go mamatl ma'ala. From below up, you look at a world, and I realize there's something greater. Think of the other way around. Atzmus dressed himself up in Hoyd v'Hadar.
That's the beauty.
That's the beauty. Then beauty. Here's a beauty you're getting a little taste of it in Chachma. Here's a spurt of it in Bina. Okay. Now that the Mittler Rebbe says, so when the klaf, the white parchment has two elements of white. There's the white parchment that surrounds everything and surrounds every letter. Then there's the whiteness in the letter itself. Let's say you make a samach.
Yeah.
So that whiteness is shaped by the flower. That's the Eir HaGvul in the Eis, which is the Keli. That would be the two shittas. The shitta that's pshutim would say even that whiteness is also only looking to you as a letter, but it's really not. And according to the shit in this hamshach, you say that whiteness actually has not assumed the property of gvul, but the parchment around remains Bli Gvul. I think the two shittas really come down to how, what it comes down to. You just said it good. You look at the flower, the color. Is the color also Bli Gvul, or no? There you have it, and you want to go to Bli Gvul as a more equalizer. Okay. Let's say and that's what means the Sefirot Ein Sof are Ein Kates. That they're fundamentally in a state of Ein Sof. They're not defined by structure. The Inyan Sefirot who rak his galus ha'atzmus mamish. You see, he's defining Sefirot by behirus now, by brightness. The Sefirot, all it is the revelation of atzmus mamish v'im kain. How do you b'chinas ha'pshitas deir in Sev Baruch Hu? So now Sefirot is what? Is pshitus. It's about shapelessness. It's about a lack of structure. Teichen ha'inyan hanal this was the summary. I'll just say it again. The teichin of all this is who the kamay ba'er pnimi lashitzush b'chinas pshitzis mamish. Just like in the immanent energy, according to the opinion that it's literally shapeless. Kedim shemahaves hakelim. Before it creates the containers, chenu ba'er ein sof, the same thing as the er ein sof that's higher than er pnimi. In this transcendent energy, gam kamay shanu emrin b'shu chacham v'yachal. Even when we say that he's a chacham and he's able, bina, the fisheina bab b'chinas kelim b'chinas mitzias davar. Because it does not come into containers and to mitzias davar. Okay. Actually, this is not contradiction to what he said earlier, because this is all in arich and this is all hodar. And in atik you can't even say yudir sashlila. That's the whole point. Etzema er hodar hoid v'hodar levashta. Hoid is the etzema er, like the antu chad. So let me continue the next chapter. The Keser we did already. Omnom Adayin Sarach Lahav in chapter 125. At Omnom we still need to understand Mashakos Beis Chaim Sheyesh Eshes Sfiris the Igulim, that there are 10 spheres of Igulim. 10 spheres. Eichem Misper Eser. What we just established is Sfiris in bleak wool. Fine. According to the interpretation that it's Behirus, that it's clarity, it's brightness. Fine. But the number 10, how do you get a number 10 here?
Yep.
In other words, the interpretation that it's numbers, misper, doesn't belong in this level. Because according to what we discussed earlier, that in the infinite transcendent energy, that there is infinite amount of spheres. And also the spheres themselves are ein ketz. So there's two things here. You have not just Chochmah Bina through Malchus, you have infinite possibilities. And each possibility is also not the shape of it, but the hafla of it, the awe of it, the majesty of it. We just established the whole point of it is not that it's Chachma Bina's levels. So how could you say there's the number of 10 spheres? So when it says in Eitz Chaim, yes, Esher spheres, the Igulim. The truth is, I'm not clear why he's saying this, because you could say Igulim, he means lower levels of Igulim. Okay, because he said all the Igulim are connected, that's why. All Makifim, all Kesarim, Shtalshos Kesarim, L'cheira. Okay, one second. And being that there are 10 spheres, you have to say, L'cheira, seemingly, that they're separate levels. Or else there's no, how could you say Num 10? 10 means distinction. 1, 2, 3, 4. If they're all 1, it's not 10. Or if they're infinite, it's not 10. And in truth, you cannot say in the infinite transcendent energy levels, distinct levels. Like we learned earlier, chapter 82. There the question was, he asked the question there, how could you say levels in Blikvul? But there he was not talking about how the Esser spheres in Blikvul.
Even the columns,
he was talking about the levels. How could you say Keser of Ak, Keser of Atzilus, Keser of Bria, Keser? So his answer was that there is no Riba. They're all of the same quality.
Right.
They're all the same quality. But Kolshkein, so Shagam Mir Riba Ein Be'emes, that you can't even say Riba Mir. You can't say more and less there. But Kolshkein Shein is Chalkus Madregas, and for sure that there's no levels.
1, 2, 3.
Right. So you can't even say Ribi Amiyat. You can't even say that there's one level that is just getting diminished. There's no diminishment there.
Yeah.
So what makes those levels? If we remember, those levels are made by the Pnimi. Remember, we said that was the fundamental difference between transcendent energy and immanent energy. Remember, this was the point. In immanent energy, this fundamental, it's not just diminished. Bina is not just diminished Chachma. They have two different personalities. That's how God wanted. That's the Kayach HaGvul, that's Eir HaGvul. What did he want? He wanted to have, Daimim is not Shemeach, simple as that.
Okay, so on the level of the immanent, it's clear.
1 second, yeah. But even in imminent, it's not that a stone is diminished plant and a plant is a diminished animal. Two distinct entities. There's also, because they're distinct, this one gets less energy, this one gets more entity. But there's a real individuality. In Makif, in transcendence, there's no individuality. There's no such thing. In Keserim, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as fundamental different levels. It's one Keser that's everywhere. There's Keser of Atzilus and Keser of Bria. It's not in the Keser, it's in the, because it's relating to, it's like the Ratzon to walk and the Ratzon to study. To walk is much easier. So the Ratzon is a different type of Ratzon, not because the Ratzon is different, it's because, right, exactly, same smell, I desire it. And that's all that matters. That's what he said there. So there is not only there's no Ribi Amiyat, and for sure there's no levels. But even diminishment there isn't. It's the same Ratzon. In other words, the intensity of a little child who says, I want to play with a toy, and the intensity of someone who says, I want to learn Ayin Beis, it's the same intensity. It's just the object is different. Okay. So why he's saying this? He's only breaking, he wants to make the case there's no spheres there. So the question is, the question makes it stronger. Right. Like we said before, they're ein kates ba'atzman. They are fundamentally ba'atzman in themselves. They also are unlimited. So we have the question: how do you then say 10 spheres there? So why can't he just answer that the 10 spheres are not there? They're on the next level. They're not in the Eira Blikvul. He's clearly in Eitz Chaim. It says Igulim. Okay, let's see. The answer is because we now learned earlier in chapter 56. See how he's bringing together all the chapters here. He's going to say the Eira and Saf the Yesef B'chinas Gilui Min Ha'etzem and a Shayach Boy Shum Shem Klal. That Eira and Saf that's really fundamentally Gilui Min Ha'etzem is just a revelation of the source. Einish Boy Shum Shem Klal does not have any name, does not have any description basically. Rak Kamoisha Ba B'chinas Makav Le'elam is Hari Ba B'Shem Ratzon. Hari Unikra B'Shem Ratzon. So he says there that's not even Ratzon. It's only when it comes on a makif to the world, relating to existence, that's when it begins to, it assumes the name Ratzon, desire. Let me just explain something. It's also very relevant. We said this many times earlier, but it's important, very important. He spoke the difference of the source of Eir Makif, Eir Pnimi, of transcendent energy and immanent energy. Remember there was two functions. And I gave them the example of the head of a department and the chief of staff. There's one element that is just revelation of what the source wants. That's Eir Gilui Min Ha'etzem. Eir Pnimi is not just revelation of what the source wants, it's L'hoyed L'elamis. It has a function. So think of a king, tells his second in command, you go now, his Mishnah L'melech, and tell, here are my orders for today. This one should go dig a well. This one should go conquer a country. This one should go bring the food. This one should go send a message to the people. The king has a whole bunch of decrees. The chief of staff, the one who's just presenting it, his inyan is Gilui Min Ha'etzem. All his role is to tell people what the king wants. The actual mechanisms of how you dig a well, that's the expertise of Eir Pnimi. Each one of them can be focusing the king just wants. What does he want? I need to know what he wants. He wants me to go dig a well. Okay, I need a team for that. I need people who know how to dig. I need shovels. The one who's going to conquer needs weapons. The one who's going to send a message to the people needs scribes, needs mailmen, needs horses, needs camels, whatever, to send the message. My point is, Gilui Min Ha'etzem's role is to tell existence that the God wants something. All I'm here to tell you is revealing God, godliness. And the Eir Pnimi has a role. Chochmah, Bina, Das, and so on and so forth. Now obviously they're both Eir, so they're all coming from the same source. But their functions are very different. One, as he put it, has no function actually. Its only function is to reveal the Etzem. And the other is very specific functions. Obviously, you want to join both.
He's saying it's what God wants. Why can't you say that's Ratzon? It's what God wants.
You keep going back to the same, but he wants a well. If you can't build a well with Ratzon, you can have desire all day. If you're sitting right here and you're imagining a well being built, it's not going to help you. You need a well. And to do a well, you need tools, and you need specific...
I understand.
So that's what we're talking about.
But upstairs, he still has...
No, so there's two... So there's one messenger, the field of energy emits what the divine will is.
Right.
It's not even will yet, it's just energy. And then each head of the department has to pass it on to that thing. That's Eir Pnimi. That's imminent energy.
Okay.
What's the question?
No, but that's in it. I thought that's the way I always looked at it. What's in the transient energy? How do you have Sefirot?
But what do you mean? How you always looked at it, frankly, is very nice. But here is the Rebbe Rashab telling us how it is. So why don't we understand how you want to assume what you learned, but more important than what it says in Ayin Beis? He asked a question, a very fundamental. He said there's no Esser Spheres there. You have no question.
He says there's no Esser Spheres.
He just asked a question. How could you say 10 spheres in Bligvul? You have an answer? Fine. I'd like to hear what he has to say. Then you can compare notes. Well, I mean, I understand. The Rebbe Rashab is asking this question.
Based on what you just said, that he's what the king desires,
So, but he's saying there's 10 spheres there, and he wants to know how could there be 10 spheres in Eir HaBlikvul. That's what he's asking. How could there be 10? So now he's beginning to answer. So he said, we learned earlier in chapter 56 that really Eir Ein Sof is Gilim in Etzem. There's no name at all. You can't even say desire. Now desire, even though it is a makif, like I just said, the desire to eat, desire to study, the desire to walk is an equal force, but because it has a relationship, it's close, and has a relationship to the imminent specific function, I'm sorry. And a reflection of it does manifest in the Eir Pnimi, because your desire is what's driving you to eat or to walk or to read or to talk or whatever it is. So something of the Ratzon does enter into the Pnimi. Yeah. So we have now, it's not just pure makif in the purest form that we've been speaking. We're talking now of something that does have a relationship.
This is your mashal of the department heads. This makif.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what he's leading to, exactly.
The makif of Chachma, the makif of Rabbi.
That's what it looks like. Yeah. It's already Ratzon. It already has Shem Ratzon.
The Arik.
Huh?
Arik, right?
No. Ratzon is Arik usually. Yeah. Atik is.
That's just the klal is the Ratzon, but then there's the Ratzon individual thing.
Okay, because Arik could be Arik klal, there's Arik prati. It doesn't matter. But Atik is not. Atik is the field of energy, the real Atik. Ratzon, as soon as it's Ratzon, it's already a lower level, he's saying.
Each one is.
So what Ratzon is Arich. In general, Ratzon is Arich.
All the tzeinis are connected. But then there's the Ratzon of Chachma, the Ratzon of Bina.
Yeah, but he's distinguishing it from, not Ratzon, he's distinguishing it from Atik, which is the energy itself, the Etzem HaEr.
So in Atik is stuck in...
Well, let's see, 1 second. So it has a relationship. However, even as a relationship, the way it manifests, it's not nitfis by air. It's not grasped by the energy. It's affecting it. It's some of it is entering it. Love b'chinas hagbala. It's not limiting it. The Ratzon doesn't suddenly become shaped by the thing it desires. It's affecting it. It's entering into it, but it's not. Now he says in the parentheses, like the Eir Pnimi. It's not like the Eir Pnimi. Like the imminent energy. In Eir Pnimi, the energy, when you, for example, say, okay, I desire now to write. And I take a pencil and I start writing. The Ratzon is affecting it. Some of it is entering, but the power of my faculty to write is actually manifesting completely in my hand, and now I'm going to write. It is nitfis. It's not detached. Like we learned earlier, chapter 14, the hidden wisdom and the revealed wisdom. That the unconscious wisdom, or the concealed, the hidden wisdom, and the revealed wisdom, that when it becomes revealed, And tfisa b'kli, when you're actually conceiving of an idea in your mind, in your brain, the kli, in the container, nasa b'chinis mahus chachma. It's not just a detached thing. You are now, it's actually become the personality of wisdom. Ad shechachma stimoi l'mayla min hachachma legaba. To the point that chachma stimoi shtei kachal machshava, from its perspective, it's higher than wisdom. When someone says steak, it means I can't get it.
In this example,
if wisdom was only a reflection of concealed wisdom and it doesn't manifest, then why is it? Why don't I get it? Because no, it's become real chachma now. So even though it's rooted in chachmas tamah, but it's become. He's explaining pnimi, that pnimi manifests and is controlled by. When I'm sitting and writing an aleph, I'm not writing a beis. I can't write a beis while I'm writing an aleph. I'm manifest there. I'm bound by it. I'm bound. But he's saying Chachmas Timog comes into Chachma Klu, it's bound to the point that the hidden Chachma is considered not Chachma by it. Ubayir Makif Einikein. But Er Makif Rotzen, even though it's lower than the Etzema Er, it's lower than the energy itself. It's now taken on, as he said, assumed the name Rotzen. It's not pure Gilia Etzem, but because its relationship is with something, even then it's not manifest within it. Ella, Shagam Bislapshuse Be'er Primi Hariu Kamoshu B'chinas Bligvul. So it retains its blig vul even when it's manifest and it's saying, I want to eat, I want to talk, I want to write. It still retains, even when it's manifesting in the imminent, it still remains in a state of blig vul. And this is still a lower level. V'inyan hudin in his bar l'il, Perik Nun, look, all these chapters. The inyan of this is, so now what do we establish? Everyone's following here? He's coming to answer the question, how are there 10 spheres in Makif? In Igulim, when we said Igulim are just Gilead Etzim and higher than all structures, Ein Ketz. There's a flaw, we spoke at length now. To understand this, he began by discussing what we said earlier, that Rotzen is one step below in Blig Vul. The Eid HaBlig Vul itself is Gilead Etzim, and Rotzen is already where it becomes a Makif for Elamus. It has some relationship, as we discussed then. So now he explains, so therefore it has a relationship, but it's still beyond. It's still above. So the inyan of this is, we learned earlier in chapter 50, I'll call Evri Haguf. The desire is a makif of all the organs of the body, limbs of the body, limbs. And on all the faculties, upoil bahem, and it affects, and upoil bahem, and it has enough, and it impacts them, it affects them. B'shava, equally. Equally from the energy in the mind of the mind in the brain, of the mind in the head, and in the power to walk in the regel. Like we just said, Ratzon is the equalizer. And nevertheless, nevertheless, in the regel, it's only makif. It's telling you to walk. It's commanding you to walk. Whereas when it comes to intellect, besides the fact that it affects it in the form of makif like it does the leg, that means it compels the mind to think, because we're not asking. Remember, Ratzon works by what? By authority, not by persuasion, not by education, not by training. It's through authority. Like we learned before, chapter 51. Obviously, we have to look at all these chapters to really. So when the leg, it comes to the lower part, let's say to walk. Walking has no way of relating to Ratzon. My Ratzon is telling me, I want you to march now, go on a talucha. When it comes to Seichel, there's also an element that Ratzon is commanding the Seichel, but Seichel, because its personality is such, but also the Ratzon has some type of pnimi that you can find a reason for this desire. The Ratzon is still higher than reason, but you could have a relationship. That's what he said, Chachmas Timah and Chachma Gluya. It's rooted maybe in a place that's beyond reason, but you could find Sharotzon Bo B'Seichel Liyas Tam L'Ratzon. Doesn't mean it has to be that way, but it means that is. Like, remember the Rambam Paskins in Seif Hilchos, different places, he says even though all the mitzvahs are because of Hashem, we still can find reasons for them. When we say this, only the reflection of desire. The etzem haratzon hari ein tam l'ratzon. The core of desire be'etzem is there's no reason. But the reflection of desire comes in a reason. There's a reason for this desire. Like Teira, for example, is a pirush, is an explanation of, and a bir as an interpretation of, ubir an explanation of mitzvahs. The mitzvahs are ratzon elyon. Mitzvahs are ratzon elyon, are the higher desire. But Teira and Teira comes in a state of reason and explanation for the desire. It doesn't just say in the Teira, put on tzitzis, keep Shabbos, kabedes avicha. The Teira also gives you reasons. Why put on tzitzis with the Isam? Why Shabbos? Because God created the world. Well, God took you out of Mitzrayim. Why could it have just been a series of rules God's just commanding us to do? So Teira gives a tam l'rotzon. And through this, there's a distinction in the desire. That's why you say there are kalas, there are more lenient mitzvahs or chamuras, harsher mitzvahs, more stringent. Because from the perspective of reason, there is a difference between one mitzvah and the next. In truth, the ratzon, even the way it manifests in a reason, it fundamentally still retains its bligvul, lack of distinction. Because we're not saying the reason is the tam, the reason is the cause for the desire. We're saying once we have the desire, we're finding a reflection of it in the seichel, and we can explain it. But it's not the reason for the desire. The desire for mitzvahs is not a reason, not because of a tam, which is obvious, because God doesn't have reasons. God is created reason. Kim shem b'rotzen be'emes is because their desire in truth, because rotzen be'emes, shem rotzen be'emes. Interesting expression. Because their desire in truth, that's all they are. Valkein gam la'acher pirush bira mitzvah pia teira. That's why also when it comes down afterwards in explanation and in interpretation and explanation of mitzvah of al pitera, hine kasheishes a mitzvah k'moishi al pitera hari mekayim esarotzna v'nimshach ha'idei zebechin esarotzna. So even when it comes in a reason, you do the mitzvah according to al pitera. Hine kasheishes a mitzvah k'moishi al pitera hari mekayim.
When he actually does it, that's what I mean.
Yeah. He does it the way the Torah says. He performs. He fulfills the higher desire, and through this he brings down rotzon, not tam. Ubekavonas mitzvah levad, I believe with time we say this one ain't yetzer klal. So in other words, if he would just say, you know what, I'm going to discuss the reasons for the mitzvah. I understand the intention. No, because the whole point of the tam is not. The reason is not a cause for the ratzon. The ratzon wants you to do it, but the only thing is the ratzon manifests in reason, but it remains bligvul fundamentally, and that's why if a person says, just having the kavanah, the intention of the mitzvah alone, or you're just going to learn the reasons and the secrets of it, he doesn't perform at all. He doesn't at all fulfill the mitzvah. Only through actually doing it. So that's a clear proof that the reason is only a reflection, not a cause. Levad b'mitzvah she'ef shel aseis na'idei acherim. Accept the mitzvahs that someone else can do them. Ein mevatel talmud Torah v'hainu b'mitzvah she'ein necheves haguf. He's qualifying and saying, but there are mitzvahs that yes, it's true that someone else can do them. So then you're not mevatel. For example, when you're learning Torah, you're not mevatel Torah to do a mitzvah. Why? Because someone else can do it. Because it's not a mitzvah that's cheves haguf. It's not something that's you're responsible. The thing has to get done, and as such, someone else can do it. You're just qualifying by saying, in other words, so you could be learning the mitzvah and not doing it, but that's only because it's not your responsibility. The ratzon is not on you. It's not. It doesn't negate what he's saying here, basically. Now he's going further. Even when you're doing the mitzvah, no, but it's not just you're studying the reasons. It's also not enough to just have an intention and to say, you know what, I'm thinking about the reason why I'm doing it. You have to do it for Kabbalah Sale. You have to do it because you're accepting the yoke of heaven. Dafke. Bir kavanas basiyas mitzvah. Like he says in Tanya, Perek Mamalav, the explanation of the kavanah when doing a mitzvah. In other words, if you say, okay, learning alone and the reason we understand, but now you're doing it, you can say, I'm doing it, and my intention is the reason that it was given. He says, no. Yeah, the reason has to be is because God wants you to do it. So it makes it even more that the blik vul of the Ratzon is retained in the mitzvah. The Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim, who mitzad haratzon. I'm sorry, the Kabbalah Sel Malchus mitzad haratzon. What means Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim? It's not that you're just doing it even if you don't understand. That alone is testifying that you're doing it because it's the point of this is Ratzon. It's a beautiful taich. Usually Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim is, it's not about whether you're in the mood or not, or whether you understand or not. You're doing it, you just submit. No, this is how you connect to the root of a mitzvah is Ratzon. The only way to connect to Ratzon is not to let Tam get in the way, basically. And Kavanah. So you're doing it, so that's Kabbalah Sel Malchus Mitzad Ratzon. It's a very powerful, argument for what Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim is.
Not another time mitzvah.
No, but the Kavanah is, this is uncolored. This is the lack of colors. But then he wants you to bring it in the colors. That's the whole point. To bring the Kabbalah Sel. The Kabbalah Sel alone dictates, I want you now to bring it into your reason. But not because it has a reason, but because reason, look, it's the field of energy is going to go into the Sefirot. It's not the Sefirot define the field of energy, it's the field of energy defines the Sefirot. Okay. So we see from all this that even when the Ratzon mitzvah comes into reason for the reason of the desire, Mekol Mokim, nevertheless, it's still fundamentally truth desire. It retained blik vul. Which means, because even though he understands the reason, he understands what the Ratzon. Like in other words, you can get a command you have no understanding. Here's a command that I do understand. It makes total sense to me. Think about mishpatim, the mitzvahs that make sense, mitzvahs sichlis. Nevertheless, God's Ratzon, this is unbelievable because he's really using the asis of Eira Blikvul and Eir Gvul. It's nitfis, not nitfis. The Ratzon does not become nitfis, it's not grasped by this. In other words, even though this makes total sense to you, and you understand the mitzvah, the Ratzon, but the Ratzon is not defined by your understanding. Even then. It's not nitfis b'zeh being that it's seichel and tam, reason, seichel, intelligence and reason. It's only kim rather because it's ratzon b'emes. It's in truth ratzon. Is there a difference to say b'chinas kim hu b'emes ratzon or saying ratzon b'emes?
Ratzon b'emes is like the ultimate ratzon.
Before you also said Ratzon b'emes.
Yeah, I'm just asking. Is there a difference if you would say kim hu b'chinas b'emes ratzon or hu b'emes ratzon than saying ratzon b'emes is the same thing? Sounds similar. Well, and that's why, from the perspective of the desire of the mitzvahs, in truth, there's no difference between lenient and harsh. Like the Rizal say, do not measure, do not sit and measure and weigh in the mitzvah sotera. V'gam be'emes ein hatam. Oh, there's parentheses. How long is this parentheses? Yeah. V'gam be'emes, and also in truth, ein hatam tefes be'etzem mahus haratzon. So he's saying it's not just you shouldn't do it. You could say al yeshiv v'shekel is that there is kalas v'chamuras, even in ratzon, but you shouldn't be measuring that. Gavra. He's saying further, even the chefza. In truth, ein atam tefes mit be'etzem mahus haratzon. In ratzon, there's really no kalas v'chamuras even. The reason does not grasp in the fundamental core of desire. The chasus suma chayiv betzitzis v'chasus laila potter. Like it says elsewhere, when it says about a garment that a blind person wears, the mitzvah of tzitzis is v'le'isam, you should see. So it says a blind person wears a garment. Does he chayiv betzitzis? The answer is yes. Eye doesn't see. Well, chasus laila, which is let's say pajamas, what you wear at night, potter.
That's the Isam saying.
Right, the same Isam say. I mean, even more.
So here, it's on one hand you see it.
Yeah. Because if you went purely by reason, you could have argued the other way around. That a blind person should wear tzitzis. And at night, it's true, you don't see it at that moment. You could wake up and see it at any given moment.
No, you would say that.
I'm saying the opposite. A summa should be potter because he never can see it. At night, you can say, you know what? You could see it, you could wake up, yeah?
Not talking about night, so what's a summa?
No, but...
Yeah, because the Isam at night you can't see, so therefore it's potter. So the summa, can either see, it should also be potter.
No, but it says but also but you could say the same. You could say chshus laila, not just night. It could what?
No, Yisam may say is when you could see it, when you could see in the day generally.
You're saying the tam lehepech is only for the summa.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Does that say somewhere?
No, this is what's much more.
Oh, because you could say also the other way around. Chshus laila, you could turn on the light.
You could say that. I don't know why you're like...
Right, or you could go in. You could turn on the light. And
given that the Xus Laila is potter. Why? Because that's what Isam said. The Gemara says that. Because it says Isam said the Gemara learns. When there's daylight, when it's light outside. That's why it's potter. So the Chura, Asuma should be potter if it's because you can't see. Same thing.
Exactly. So I'm saying you could say the tam lehepech. You could say the opposite reason.
Why should you say the opposite reason?
If you're going by reasoning, so if it's about seeing it, so there's a time you can see it.
When at night you can't
and
see
if you have eyes, there's a time you can see it at night. If there's light, if there's a fire, you see.
Yeah.
It's not,
I think both ways you could say it. I don't see any reason.
There's no way.
But bottom line is, this din is more mitzad ratzon, so his chayav b'tzitzis. From mitzad hatam, you could say the opposite reason. Kam ken. The reason the din is this way, the law, because that's the desire. That there should be some comprehension, some comprehension in the desire, but not that the desire should be nitvis, should be defined by it. Now, desire that comes in the state of wisdom, that you could understand that there should be a reason for the desire. That's only an extension and a revelation of desire. That's malchus within Keser. Keser is Ratzon, and malchus is the ispashtus. And the emotions and the midas within Keser. As it's known that malchus is just revelation. Same thing, emotions are not the core thing, they are extension and gili. See, malchus, he says, is just revelation. Midas is also spashtus v'gili.
He's starting to answer that the Sefirot is in Keser.
That's what the question was.
Right here, he's starting to answer it.
We'll see. Well, let's see. We'll see. I am sure that he's going to spell it out. As it's known, the whole union of emotions is for another, or to another. You feel for something, you're attracted to something, you're repelled by something. This is the difference between intellect and emotions. The meichen in la'atzma, and intellect is to yourself, Ayin is still to yourself. Intellect, when you're sitting and cognitively thinking about something or processing, it could be yourself. You don't need anyone. Midas is defined by others. They're to another. You like someone else. You're drawn. You're repelled by something. Same thing is in Keser, which is Ratzon. The way Keser, the Ratzon, extends itself and is revealed to the emanations, that's the midas and malchus of Keser. It's the lower levels of Keser. That's called revealed desire. How your desire manifests and relates to something else. However, it's known that there's a level of chachma, wisdom in Keser. This is called concealed wisdom, or unconscious wisdom. This is the hidden, the concealed, the covered up reason for ratzon. Hidden wisdom is higher from revealed wisdom. This hidden wisdom is higher than understanding and reasoning. As we will discuss later at length. So Chachma Star is completely higher than Chachma Gluya. He's speaking now in Keser. Okay. And that's the Hamshach Nelemes, if you remember, or before we learned it. We learned earlier, chapter 96. Remember, we learned there about Chacham Umevim B'daite from Chagiga. So we learned that there's a level that is wisdom. He just gets it differently, but it's still wisdom. Chacham B'atzim Kei Chachmaseh. So what do we learn there? There's Hamshach Nelemes. It's a hidden revelation, a hidden transmission. Even though Mishlam in Hagili, meaning it negates and it's beyond the revelation, from revealed conscious understanding, nevertheless, it's not mushal completely from the category of Chachma. It's called hidden wisdom. And here, as opposed to what we have in Midas and Malchus of Keser, where you have something revealed called Ratzon Goli, this is already a concealed Ratzon that's higher than the revealed Ratzon in wisdom. This is the level of Ratzon that's higher than reason, Lagamri, completely higher than reason, completely higher than reason, that's in the level of the revealed wisdom. Okay, that's how he's saying it. That means in this level that's completely higher than reason as it is in the revealed, has another reason that's in the concealed. There's a reason. We learned this also. By Shtei Kachol of Machshava, he spoke. That was proof, by the way, that the spheres have tzir in them. Like Asham and Hill, another proof was, he said, because there's a level of Chokhmah that's concealed, that when you say Shtei Kachol, God forbid to say that God is just Akshanis. It's a wisdom, except it's a higher reasoning. It's a higher level of wisdom, basically. It's in wisdom a different dimension. Ukiyin Shtei Kachol of Machshava, like the Inyan of steak, be silent. That's how it arose in my will, in my thought. That means in the desire that manifests in the hidden wisdom. That compared to revealed wisdom is considered higher than reason.
He skipped up the level of Chachma, Gluya. He went straight to Chachma Alama.
Because he's in Keser. He's talking everything in Keser here.
Yeah, but he started Malchus in Keser, then he said Midas of Keser.
All in Keser.
Yeah, all in Keser.
Oh, that's already higher than Chachma Gluya.
Malchus of Keser and...
Yeah, they're all higher than Chachma Gluya.
Chachma Gluya of Keser I'm talking about, no?
There's no Chachma Gluya in Keser. Chachma Keser is Chachma Stima. There's no system.
There's Malchus and Midas in Keser?
There's also, Malchus and Midas compared to Chachma in Keser is pashtus, but it's...
There's no Chachma of Keser, goes straight to
Chachma Gluya, there's no Chachma of Keser means Chachma Stima. Because Keser is desire. We're not talking here, there's 10 spheres. We're talking within the 10 spheres within Keser. 1 second. Okay, good. We'll see where he's going. I mean, he goes, well, the Gaba Chachma Gluya who b'chinas ma... Okay, so. The Gaba Chachma Gluya, compared to revealed wisdom, who b'chinas makif levad. This level of the hidden wisdom, the hidden reason, is in a makif. It's a form of transcendence alone. Kamei rotzen b'lei tam. It looks like a rotzen without a reason. V'kol zeh b'chinas rotzen abba b'gili. And all this is in the level of desire as it comes in a revealed way. If either or in the level of revelation to the emanation that it manifests in revealed wisdom, or revealed to himself still. That's the level of desire that manifests in hidden wisdom. So what all this he spoke about is all revealed wisdom. Even the higher level, even Chachmas Tima. Omnam, etzem b'chinas saratsan elam, l'gamei she'ene ba b'chinas gili klal. Now there's a third level. Third level is the core of the hidden will, desire. She'ene is an element of that's completely.
All this was the
yes, all this was
dimension.
I would say Midas and Malchus is not the lower levels of Arich.
Yeah.
Chachmas Tima is Chachmas Tima of Arich. Now he's going to Keser Shebekesser. Basically, what this is, what we learned so far, is we have, I think it's Shir Atzmei B'Koyach, But higher than that is the Sefirot Saint Ketz, and then there's let's see where it goes. I'm not sure yet. Because this is still arich. This is still hodar, spashtus. It's chochem midaita. If you remember, was not the etzem koyach, how wisdom in etzem hanefesh. It's already chochma, but a different level. She'ena bo b'chinas gili klal. This one already is no gili at all. Zeo b'chinas keser shebe keser. This is keser within keser. Or you can say atik. Dahainu b'chinas pshitus harotzen. This is the complete shapelessness of desire. She'en tam l'rotzen klal. There's no reason at all. Gam loy b'chinas tam komus l'rotzen. Not even a concealed reason. Ve'ena bo b'chinas agili gam la'atzmei. And it's not even revealed to himself yet. Kimu b'chinas rotzen nelam levad. It's just a state of a concealed desire. V'zeu in Yamashakazu Beis Chaim Beis Sefirot Deigulim. And this is now what it means in Eitz Chaim. It says there's 10 Sefirot Deigulim. Di'ashlema she'ena kavana sheyesh es Sefirot mamish. B'chinas eir makif. Who can say that doesn't mean that there's actual 10 spheres in the eir makif. Ki b'chinas ein sof obligul. We said eir makif is infinite and unlimited. The gamma spheres shebayhem b'chinas ein kates. And also the spheres we said are unlimited. In case l'spheres, there's an endless to spheres. The commission is baralea, like we learned earlier. So what does it mean as spheres? Like mitzadis galus v'ishpashta sharotzen ba'spheres. But because from this level will ultimately come out, from the perspective of the revelation and the extension of this rotzen in the spheres, al shem zeh onu emrim es spheres be'er makif. So we're really calling it as spheres based on what's going to come out of it. The b'chinas harotzen agol shemer b'chinas chochma that still nikkel b'chinas midas umalchus sheberotzen. Because the rotzen guy that radiates in chochma vatzilas, that's called midas umalchus sheberotzen canal, like we said earlier. Liyesum b'chinas ispashtus v'gili, because they are already an extension and revelation. V'gam neida da'avo. It's also known that Abba v'Ima malbishim l'zreyas da'arechampim. They dress up. They're the garments for zreyas, for the arms of arechampim. So that's what he means. The midas of arich, what are the garments? They dress up in chachma bina of atzilus. Umebina da arich nasa keser lava. He's also explaining. Okay, so from bina, that's the arms, and the bina of arich that becomes the keser for Abba v'Ima. Like it says in Eitz Chaim, and therefore, because rotzen, even though the level we're talking now is completely concealed even from yourself, therefore this rotzen, meaning the infinite energy, that manifests in Abba v'Ima nikra midas. I'm sorry. No. He's still talking to the lower levels. And therefore this rotzen, which is Bechinas Ha'ere Ein Sof, it manifests in Abba v'Ima, that's called Midas, like he said, because it's already an extension. And what manifests in the hidden wisdom of Arich, that's revealed but only to yourself, that's called Chochma, the name Chochma, Igul HaChochma, Igul HaBina, Igul HaChesed. The Kol Zeh Rak Al Shem Mislapshus Levad. This is only not because it really has in its spheres, but because it's going to manifest in the spheres. But like we said, even when Rotzen manifests in specific things, it still remains removed from them and shapeless. Omnam etzem b'chinas hakeser, zeh b'chinas keser b'keser, zeh b'chinas harotzen el v'pashut, she'eni b'chinas gili klal, hu b'chinas pshitus ha'atzmus.
And over there, there's no spheres.
Omnam etzem b'chinas hakeser, but however, the core of keser, that's keser shebe keser, that's the rotzen elam, that's completely concealed and completely shapeless, doesn't come in any revelation, not even to himself. Hu b'chinas pshitus ha'atzmus, and that's the state of complete shapelessness of atzmus. That's like atik.
And then no spheres there.
He doesn't say that.
That's what he's saying. That's what
No. I don't know if you're right. Of course. You want to say of course? Okay, you can say of course as much as you like, but the
what does he mean by that's the chulo here. That's what it means.
Whatever you say.
What do you mean? After winning the whole thing, isn't that the natural?
No. Not necessarily.
There's nobody trying to say that over there. There's no.
Do you have it figured out? I don't. I'm looking at it. The Prince of the Gamas for the Shabayim Prince in case. The Gamas for the Shabayim Prince in case. The Gamas says God.
Something Jerry. Then you can give it a shame.
The Prince give it Gamas and Prince is the normal lot.
We already defined it. He already defined it.
Isn't that the first line over here? It says, "Bechinas Ratzon Hagala Yishmei Bechinas Chachma Tzilas Nikra Bechinas Midas Hamachos." Over there, there's Sefirot.
I didn't say what you said is wrong. I want to see what the Rebbe Rashab says.
Amana Metzim Bechinas Keser. That's over there. It's Bechinas Pshitas Atzmos.
Well, we did learn till now that even Atik doesn't have Sefirot. We said Behiris was as Atik manifests in Hadar, Haid in Hadar. Because Atik is beyond Behiris even.
Sefirot, which level is that? That's Arich, right?
Arich.
Before that, there's no Sefirot.
Right. That's what we learned. One second. Then he asked the question that, okay, we now understand how there's Sefirot and Bligvul, because Sefirot means Behiris. Brightness. We understand that. Because brightness, the idea of revelation, that begins in Heid V'Hadar Lavashta, like he explained at length. But what kind of brightness is there? Is Pshitas. There's no distinction between Chachma and Bina, as we spoke, the Hafla, the Kal V'Chemer from Eres Pshutim. It's beyond Chachma and Bina, but there is brightness there, and that's called Sefirot. In this chapter, Kuf Chafei, he asked, but doesn't it say in Eitz Chaim there's 10 spheres? You just told me there's no spheres. There's unlimited spheres. And every sphere in itself, qualitatively, is unlimited. So how there's 10? So his answer is that it's al shem on what is going to come later. That later this field of energy, this energy that is now just brightness, is going to manifest soon into lower levels of rotzen. A rotzen for specific things. So even though it will not dress up there, it won't be contained and defined by Pnimi, by immanent, but it will be shaping the immanent. As a result, because of that, we call it Igul HaChachma, Igul HaBina, and so on. So yes, I would say it's still talking Arich, and Atik is beyond it all. The Ratzon Hanelm is not even revealed to yourself. And that level, there's no spheres at all. Not Behiris, and definitely not on what's going to come later. So basically, there's a field of energy that is not even known to you. The word known is not. There's no consciousness. Arich, that's Hoid. Hadar creates conscious energy. Conscious energy means that it is now a field of energy, but it's complete. There's spheres enkets there, unlimited spheres. There's even 10. What do we say 10? It's referring to, because from there is going to come the Ratzon that's going to come and later manifest.
Keser, Atik, that's Haid. So Haid V'Hadar Lavashta, in other words, but it's still Lavashta, but it's not Sefirot.
Hadar is.
It's considered Lavashta, but it's not Sefirot.
It is Sefirot. Sefirot Behiris.
No, but we just said now on that level there's no.
Well, it depends what you. But we're talking about Haid V'Hadar. Hadar is Arich, so there is Sefirot.
Right, Hadar is Arich. But what about Haid? Isn't Haid Atik?
So it says that Haid is the revelation of the Behira, the Sefirot. Sefirot means in Eid Ein Sof there's a Sefirot. In Atik, Arich illuminates it. Atik is the illumination of Atik.
Right. So
Atik is beyond Behiris, and Arich is the Behiris of Atik.
It's beyond Behiris. There's no Sefirot there.
The word Sefirot.
Behiris. There's no Behiris. There's no.
Arich is the Behiris. Arich is the Behiris, is the brightness of Atik. It reveals Atik.
Correct.
And Atik itself is also Lavush because it's only Etzem, not Atmos.
So Lavush, but it's not Sefirot. I think that's a distinction.
What? I just said that. What are you saying to me? But that we learned in the previous chapter. That's a given. His question here is there's 10. The thing that I'm not clear is the 10 begin not in the Ratzon Chachmas Temah. It begins in. Okay. The bottom line is that he's saying that in the world level of Arich, which already now you can call the name Ratzon, there's a level where you can't even call Ratzon. If you can't call it Ratzon, for sure there's no spheres there. And the level of Ratzon Even though you can't call 10 spheres because Ratzon is an equalizer, but because there's outer levels of Ratzon that do relate to reason and to distinction, so you can call it Al Shem Zeh, you call spheres also there.
Those are the Igulim.
That's the Igulim in the Esses spheres in Er Makif. Not Atik. Not Atzma Er, it's an Ispashtus Se'er. So bottom line is like this. The levels go like this. There's Etzma Er, then there's a level that's before that arises in his desire, then it arises in his desire, then come the next levels of Esses spheres Sagnuzis. So Esses spheres Sagnuzis, he's saying you could apply it even to a level before there's 10 hidden spheres, because ultimately that Ratzon is informing them. That's what he's essentially saying here. Let's do the Keser, and then we'll stop here, and that's it. What does it mean that in Eitz Chaim? So, however, in Eitz Chaim it says there are 10 spheres in the Gulim. Ayin hu al derech moshel harotzon b'chinas makif, ubogam kem b'chinas pnimi b'chokma. Rotzon. So there's Ein Sof that's beyond it all. Then there's Ratzon is already a level. He said it's a level. Remember, he said you can't call it a name Ratzon on the pure level of Ein Sof. So now that it's a level already, here it's makif, but it comes also pnimi b'chochma. Right? There's a Bobi Ischalkus, and through this it comes into distinctions. So Ratzon, for example, there's Taryag Mitzvahs. We just learned. So Ratzon, there are 613 desires. And there's Kalas and Chamuris, but that's already how Ratzon is affecting with his reason, and there's manifestation and distinctions. But it fundamentally remains Ratzon, like we said, Chshus Laila. Fundamentally, it's Kabbalah Sel because it's fundamentally a Ratzon that's higher. But now it's touching Ischalkus. Think of it like this: Bligvul is touching Gvul, whereas Atik is a Bligvul that doesn't touch Gvul. Or K'may Ratzon de Mitzvahs, like the Ratzon, the desire for Mitzvahs, Shabbat Betam B'Teira. That comes with the reason in the Torah. Nevertheless, even though Ratzon is informing the reasons and is connected to reason, but in itself, it fundamentally remains a desire that has no distinctions of lighter, of lenient and harsh. The same thing as Lamaila. The midas of Keser, meaning the midas of Ratzon, do come in an internal way in Chachma Bina. So it means there's a reason. That's the reasons in mitzvahs. But that's the lower levels of Keser. In other words, the lower levels of the desire do touch reasons. Then there's a hidden reason, a hidden desire, that's manifests in the hidden reason that we don't relate to. But it's still a reason. So it's still connected some way to reason. It's just not we don't have that reason. That's Shlila, by the way. That's Yidiyas HaShlila. So Yidiyas HaChiyuv is the Ratzon that connects to reasons. We have reasons for mitzvahs. Then you come and realize there's a reason we don't know, but it's still in the world of reason. And because of this, even Keser, also in Keser you can say Chachma Midas, which means 10 spheres. And yet they're Ein Sof Be'etzem, because fundamentally they're a Ratzon, they're desire. But there's desire that's touching structure. That's the 10 spheres of the Igulim. However, Keser within Keser, it does not manifest in any internal way. That is Pshittus Lagamri. What he basically was Machadish in this chapter, there's a place where Bli Gvul touches Gvul. Remember, we discussed, let me just say this before that, we discussed, first we started with Misper Sfiras, how Gvul looks at Bli Gvul. Remember, the Gvul tells you the story of Bli Gvul. Then we went the other way around, where Bli Gvul is now looking at the Gvul. Because the essence, remember, the Sfiras are Behirus, also have the meaning of Sfiras number. That's why he's so insistent on comparing the two. Because the same Sfiras that are called Behirus are also called Misper. So how is there Misper in the brightness? The answer is because the brightness is already somewhat touching and somewhat relating. Later we're going to learn that the whole reason there's Eir Gilim and Etzem is in order for there to be Esser Sfiras. So for sure it has a relationship. But you see, the challenge here is because you want to really have a state that is completely beyond structure, but you want it to communicate with the structure. So Ratzon becomes now the interface that on one hand is beyond, on the other hand it relates to Tam, the lower levels of Ratzon. So now Ratzon has become the interface dimension. Okay, so we did chapter 125, page 241 through 243.